The president of Iran died yesterday in a helicopter crash. Ibrahim Raisi's legacy of oppression in Iran earned him the name the Butcher of Tehran.
Chris Mitchell brings us this look at Raisi's actions against Israel and how his death may affect the turmoil in the Middle East.
Iran's supreme leader appointed First Vice President Mohammad Makbir as the country's acting president after Raisi's death. Iran's cabinet also announced they would continue the policies of Raisi. According to a TV state report, Raisi's helicopter crashed in bad weather after returning from inaugurating a dam in Iran's East Azerbaijan province. Iran's foreign minister also died in the crash. The crash comes after months of war between Iran's proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah, and Iran's unprecedented drone and missile attack in April. Raisi is known as the Butcher of Tehran for his involvement in sentencing thousands of political opponents to death in the 1980s after the Islamic Revolution. During his term as president, he suppressed massive protests against the regime and also oversaw Iran's nuclear program get closer to weapons-grade uranium than ever. And he was an implacable foe of Israel, but Israel is denying any involvement in his death. Also in Israel, Benny Gantz, a member of the war cabinet, publicly issued an ultimatum to Prime Minister Netanyahu. Gantz said his party would leave the government by June 8th unless Netanyahu will launch a comprehensive plan for the day after the war with Hamas ends, including a governing body in Gaza with international and Palestinian personnel. Netanyahu fired back, saying Gantz's demands would mean an end to the war and defeat for Israel, abandoning the majority of the hostages and leaving Hamas in power and creating a Palestinian state. Amid the political turmoil, thousands gathered on Saturday night in Tel Aviv demanding new elections and Netanyahu's resignation. The IDF also announced they recovered the bodies of 4 Israelis murdered by Hamas. They also released video of former hostage 8-year-old Ella Eliakim while in Hamas captivity.
The video, which is being released today for the first time, had intended to be used by Hamas for psychological terror. But Ella's family asked us to share it with the world, to expose Hamas's terror, to expose Hamas's cruelty, to expose Hamas's barbarism.
At the Knesset, Representative Elise Stefanik of New York, the 4th-ranking Republican in the House, delivered a speech before Israel's parliament on Sunday, promising to support Israel and combat anti-Semitism.
As long as I serve the American people, I will defend George Washington's vision of religious pluralism and freedom. Today, this means crushing anti-Semitism at home and supplying the state of Israel with what it needs, when it needs it, without conditions to achieve total victory in the face of evil.
And today, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court said he's seeking arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, as well as 3 Hamas leaders. The prosecutor believes they're responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza and Israel. For now, the focus is on Iran and what comes next in that country and what it means for Israel and the Middle East. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Pray for the people of Iran. May this be an opportunity for them to have liberty. He earned the nickname, the Butcher of Tehran, for his horror in the 1980s, but he could have easily earned that nickname last year, last week. There are continuing to have public execution of anyone who protests the current government in Iran, anyone who says we need a different form of government. And when you look at the horrors of living under that theocracy, where you can be beaten to death if you don't have your headscarf on right, let's pray for the people of Iran that they too could be free and they could leave this horrible ideology that calls for this kind of restriction and the attacks, continued attacks on Israel. Turning to the ICC, one of the charges against Netanyahu is that somehow or other he's responsible for the starvation of a civilian population. Let me remind everyone watching, and I hope this goes around the world, there was a survey by Stanford University, and this was before October 7th. They concluded it in the months before. That found 2/3 of the population of Gaza had what we call food insecurity. That means they were hungry. They didn't know where their next meal was coming from. That was all under Hamas. Hamas has had control of Gaza since 2006. The IDF, there's no Israeli occupation. They've had more humanitarian donations from the EU than the United States. For such a small geographic area, with that kind of money, for there to be food insecurity shows you exactly what Hamas is doing. They don't care about the people of Gaza. They want to use them as human shields, and they're more than willing to starve them in order to get international sympathy. Who's been firing on the relief trucks? Who tried to stop the construction of the pier? All of that was Hamas. And for the ICC to say, well, it's Israel's fault? No, not on my watch. You don't get to do that. Hamas took all the international aid, plowed it into tunnels, plowed it into rocket launchers, and please be reminded, the rockets are still being fired against Israel.